Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother and sister, welcome back to Islamic Notes channel. The story of American convert Idris Diaz going on Hajj financed by Jews. This American convert to Islam decided to choose the name Idris Diaz after changing his name 3 times. He grew up in Jamaica, Queens. Idris Diaz said he went on the Hajj while on a journalistic assignment at the expense of his Jewish boss. Now he is an international lawyer with more than 20 years of experience. He advises organizations on how to navigate legal, regulatory, and practical challenges to achieve their goals. Long before that, he was a journalist. Stephen Barbosa, in his book entitled On American Jihad, Islam After Malcolm X, said that in his work environment, Diaz always found that he was the only person who was Muslim. As an expert staff, reporters and editors often called him at home from time to time to ask for his advice when reviewing news about Islam. The experience made him aware of the media's shortcomings in reporting on Islam. I think they're insensitive in their portrayal of Muslims. Look at the World Trade Center bombing, he said. You see a flood of news stories talking about Muslims as a threat. You don't get a sense of the other side of the religion. Diaz wrote a story about his life, one that chronicled his own experience performing the Hajj. He described the annual Hajj to readers by asking them to imagine the entire population of Philadelphia going to Allentown for a few weeks. Titled For the Love of Allah, the article graced the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer magazine on April 2, 1989. He spoke about his eye-opening Hajj and what led to it. Here is Idris Diaz's account of himself as quoted in the book, translated by Sudir Muntaba and Fatia Basri as Jihad Gaya America, Islam Satella Malcolm X, Mizan, 1995. My father is Black Honduran and my mother is from New Orleans. I used to be a prayer attendant in church, but I could never accept all the teachings of Jesus. I never followed the teaching of the Trinity. I think that teaching is very difficult for conscious intellectuals to accept. It raises a big question, namely, why should I speak through an intermediary? I want to speak directly to the Great One. I went to a Catholic school. I was disappointed when I was 14. At that time, I met a friend who was about 10 years older than me. He had become a Muslim. He was very great and enthusiastic. He always wore a robe, and his wife always walked 10 steps behind him. There were several aspects of that person that frightened me. I was 15 when I converted to Islam, and I can't say that I really understood what I was doing. I really didn't want to be like that person. For me, it was a constant search, always trying to find a place in the religion of Islam. You have to stick to what you find in the Quran and not what people tell you. You have to make it work for you. I still struggle with that. Because it's so new, there's always a tendency to make a big deal out of everything. Can I send Christmas cards? That's an issue. Some people get so worked up about things that they don't need to be. I love Christmas cards. I changed my name to Idris Abdul Ghani around 1983, and then I moved to the South. I lived in Kentucky under that name. People automatically assumed I was an Arab. Someone wrote a letter to the editor complaining about the foreigners on the staff. Aren't there any good Americans to work for the paper? And when Indira Gandhi was shot, I had people come up and ask me if she was my mother or my family. I think these events made me aware of certain issues. Yes, I wanted to assert my Muslim identity. This issue was not entirely inconsistent with my identity as a Black American, and I did not want to lose my Latino identity. After thinking about it a lot, I finally changed my name again to Idris Diaz. That created a sense of calm in my family. My mother was a bit reluctant to know that I had become a Muslim. Mecca riots. At the Philadelphia Inquirer, I applied to be assigned overseas. In 1987, there were terrible riots in Mecca. There was fighting between the Iranians and the Saudis, and about 400 people were killed. There was no good coverage of what was going on there, because Mecca was a closed city, and you didn't get anything except what the Saudis reported. In 1988, the Saudis and the Iranians got into another spat, and there was a big war of words. Basically, the Saudis were trying to limit the number of Iranian pilgrims. There was a fear that 1987 would happen again. So the foreign editor came to my desk and said, "Would you mind going?" I looked at him in disbelief. "I'd go tomorrow morning." although I had to take some time to think about it. I didn't know if doing the Hajj at someone else's expense would defile the pilgrimage. I asked a scholar of Islam at Howard University. He said that it was permissible to do the Hajj while doing business or running a business. When you get to Mecca, he said, you see people coming and selling things. They do their business and you do your job. That is normal. My purpose in going there was to see what might happen politically. What if I went and it was all calm? Whatever happened, I had to come back with a story. I went and it was very calm, but there was a strange scene, a mixture of religious and military activity, soldiers everywhere. I walked to the Prophet's Mosque in Medina, which is the second holiest site in Islam. It contains the tomb of the Prophet Muhammad. There are many blessings to be gained from visiting that place. There is an iron fence around the tomb, and the place is completely surrounded by soldiers carrying light machine guns. The atmosphere was very tense. People were eager to get into the mosque first so they could get as close to the front as possible. Nearby, a group of West African Muslims chatted in Hausa as they scrolled their black prayer beads. Women stood to one side, waiting to enter the mosque through a separate door. Some were covered from head to toe in black. Others, especially the African women, wore brightly colored clothes and glittering gold bracelets, their hair only partially covered with thin headscarves. After a few minutes, the call to prayer sounded from the loudspeakers inside the mosque. Allahu Akbar! God is great! The tall wooden doors of the mosque swung open, and the worshippers, according to custom, removed their shoes and pressed inside with a swift movement. After a casual search by one of the guards, I pushed my way inside and took a seat near a white marble pillar. Within minutes, the mosque was packed. You had to be searched every time you entered the mosque. Morning prayers were at 5 in the morning, but you had to be there by 3 to get inside. Over the next few days, I noticed the soldiers. I realized that the whole political situation was irrelevant to what I was supposed to be doing. I went with a group that was mostly Egyptian. It reminded me of a chapter in the autobiography of Malcolm X, where Malcolm talks about his pilgrimage and how people treated him like a brother. That was exactly the same story that I experienced. Everywhere I went, I found the same kindness. People invited me to eat or sit with them. Like millions of pilgrims before us, my group traveled together through the days in a tent made of black and white striped tarpaulin. We sat on Middle Eastern rugs spread out on the ground. During the day on the plains of Arafat, pilgrims prayed, chanted, and read their Qurans. Outside, the temperature was approaching 110 degrees, and those who ventured out covered their heads with white umbrellas. Inside my tent, pilgrims distributed fruit, cheese, and dates, and sipped from bottles of water, which were in short supply. I felt a kind of guilt. I saw people who had saved their whole lives and had really struggled to make the Hajj. God had given me all this so easily, I felt useless. What could I do to get rid of this feeling? One of the lessons I learned was that God works in mysterious ways. Over breakfast, we had long discussions about politics. Some of them were outright anti-Semitic. I said, well, the guy who paid for my pilgrimage is Jewish. How could I have a problem with a Jew? Doesn't the Quran teach that there are good people of other religions? These people actually knew more about Islam than I did, but I think they realized I was right. It was a clear lesson to them about tolerance, and that's what the Hajj is all about. You have to be in the right place at the right time, take the right direction to get to a certain place. It was very, very clear, and often the details were a little contradictory. I remember being with groups of people who would argue down to the minutiae of how to perform the next pillar of the Hajj. I said, I am here to perform my Hajj. I have come here with a good mind. I will obey everything you tell me honestly, and I hope that Allah accepts it, but I will not sit here and argue about small things like this. That did not change anything for them. They continued to argue about the matter. For the pilgrims, stoning the devil in Mina means the rejection of Satan and the reaffirmation of faith in Allah. As I entered the crowd that had gathered near the stone, I thought of the verses in the Quran that describe the day of judgment as a terrifying event, a time when the horizon will be shattered and humanity will be plunged into utter terror. It seemed that with every stone they threw, the pilgrims in Mina were trying to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the horror of the day of judgment. As I moved toward the first stone, pebbles flew indiscriminately. The back of my head and the side of my face were hit by the stones. The expressions of the people in the crowd shifted my feelings from joy to horror, and women were clutching their children, many of whom were screaming in terror. When I got back to America, both of my parents had died. The Hajj really turns your mind to death. One of the things the Sufis say is that you have to think about death every moment of your life. I was in the Grand Mosque in Mecca. The Kaaba was about 200 yards away, and I was praying. There is a hadith that says when you are on the Hajj, every prayer you do will correct 1,000 prayers that were tarnished. So I did it with devotion, laughter. It was so crowded, you can hardly move. You are praying in a space that is only as wide as your body, trying to prostrate yourself between them. At one point I was standing looking at the Kaaba. A sudden feeling came over me. I said to Allah, "This life is yours, take it. Wherever you want me to go, I will go. I am yours, come and take me away." People were pushing me from all sides and I was being pushed helplessly back and forth. There was no way to fight the current. Pilgrims are often warned to forget about anything that might fall during the tawaf, because bending down in the crowd is risky and you could get trampled. As I walked around the Kaaba barefoot, I saw many sandals, bags, and other belongings of pilgrims that had been scattered. When I returned, I was confronted by a more senior editor. He was a Christian. He was very sensitive to the project, and he really helped me put the experience down on paper. He talked me through the article. After it was published, I got tons of letters from Muslims and non-Muslims alike. I got letters from people telling me that they had never been given clear information about the religion until they read the article. Muslims told me they were so happy that my article was published there. And I also got letters from people telling me that I should burn in hell for spreading propaganda. Idris Diaz, a young man known in the entertainment world, always felt that there was something missing in his life. Although successful and surrounded by friends, he felt a deep emptiness. One day, while attending an event, he met a Muslim who shared a story about peace in Islam. Moved by the story, Idris began to find out more about Islam. He read books about the history and teachings of Islam and listened to lectures from scholars. This process made him more curious and interested. After months of contemplation and study, Idris decided to visit a mosque. There he spoke with an imam who explained the basic principles of Islam. The discussion opened his eyes and made him feel at ease. Finally, with strong conviction, Idris recited the Shahada in front of his family and close friends. This decision brought happiness and peace to his life. Idris felt like he had found his true purpose in life. With this new step, Idris is committed to living his life according to Islamic teachings and sharing his new experiences with others.